Introducing Nose to Tail, a podcast where we explore the world of aviation lifecycle solutions, insights, and more. Presented by Jet Midwest.
Welcome back to the Nose to Tail podcast. I'm Patrick Kraus, COO at Jet Midwest. We're here talking everything aviation. Today's guest is Barry. How you doing, Barry?
I'm doing well, Patrick.
Good. I always like to start every podcast out with an opportunity for you to maybe explain your aviation history or maybe even just your job history that has led you to where you are today.
Okay. Well, it's a long one, so I've been around quite a few years. I started out in the military as a 68 Bravo 20 working on Huey aircraft in the Army. Did that for 4 years and learned how to build the T-53 Lycoming engine and didn't do a whole lot of it while I was deployed at the units. They teach you how to do all that stuff in school, but when they put you out there, usually the depot level, the units do that and you do the LRU changes and the starter, general, Garlock seals, type of thing. But it was a great time. I got a lot of flight time. I was actually on flight status. I got a lot of hours in a Huey, which was a blast. I only did 4 years. I wanted to go to Europe and they wouldn't send me there. So I decided I was going to get out because if I was going to do another 4, I was going to do 20. It didn't make any sense to do 8, not finish it. But it worked out good for me because I started my career at a company called Tyranny Turbines. They then became Triumph Air Repair and then became Turbine Air Repair. It was all the same company through those 3 changes. And I was very blessed because I had a mentor that worked me through the whole process. And I started out as a mechanic and ended up being a director of all functional areas over the company over my 35 years. I worked there for 35 years. So I built all these.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I built all the APUs, built all the LRUs, tested them all. Learned about we had 9 product lines that I got to learn on, and it was a really good thing. I was also had a chance to go through the Toyota Lean certification to get my black belt, which also helped me as I went into management to be able to be a better leader for the guys and the gals that were on the floor. It was a really good career, and I actually had planned on staying there. I've been there was there for 35 years. I hadn't planned on going, but we all know that people look for people all the time, and where I'm at now, Piedmont, just made me an offer I couldn't refuse. It kind of fit where I was at, because what I was going to do in Arizona, because that's where I lived all those years, what I had planned on doing is getting a house up north and having, get out of the summer and go up north for the winters and then come back down to the valley, for the winters. But here in North Carolina, where I'm at now, it's mild weather all the time. So it worked out well for me when I came out here. And the community here is so much just slower. It's just calmer. It's just not like Phoenix is, 4 million people. There's 250,000 here in Greensboro and only 7,500 in the little town I live in, Oak Ridge. Had a really good career doing that. And then when I got here, I was hired as Senior Director of Operations in 2019. And so I ran operations. And what Piedmont does is APUs and landing gear. So this was my first introduction to landing gear. And we do the E170 and the ATR and the Gulfstream landing gear here, as well as the APUs. I did some modeling when I first got here because they wanted me to do some modeling on just building models for them because they didn't have that experience. So I did that, and then I jumped into operations. We did really well. The guys just had some obstacles in front of them. I used the skills I came with my other company, and we broke some records in 2019. Got all the backlog. It worked really well. And then, as we all know, our friend COVID showed up in 2020. And during that period of time, Piedmont's always been an authorized Honeywell service center for just about the very beginning. And at that time, the only engines they did was the 36, the 85, and the 331, 200, 250. That was the only product lines they had. But during COVID, as an authorized service center, Honeywell was putting things out to bid. I got to be on the contracts team to see what we wanted to select to bid on. And the first thing we selected in 2020 was the 777 lease pool, which is a 331-500 APU. We were successful with that bid, so we brought that on and ended up with 18 engines in our lease pool to lease to the world, including Honeywell. And no one here had any experience in doing leasing. I ran that back in my last company as a supply chain director, so I was asked to run that as well as operations. So I ran the lease pool for quite some time, and then we started to build on that, and I built my lease pool up. And then my CEO, Agel, asked me to see if I would launch a trading division of the company because he wanted that in the portfolio. So I did that and then backed out of operations, and that's where I'm at now. I've been doing this since end of 2020 all the way till now. So we built the little team up. I only got 2 guys on my team, myself and 1 guy. And my sales manager, what he does is he sells the excess inventory globally for all the companies. And we turned that into a nice little business with a nice little profit. And then I do the leasing, the exchanges, and that sort of thing. And here in about 4 months ago, I was asked to lead the sales accounts for the company as well. One thing I left out was a part of the 2020 things we purchased from Honeywell at the time was we also bought the license for the 331-500 and the 131-9A and B. And we were successful with both those bids. So we brought both those product lines on here. And we are now the only authorized service center in the United States for both of those APUs. All the other service centers that have those APUs are abroad. They're not here in the United States. So it's taken us a couple of years to get those product lines up, but it's doing really well. It's been a really nice ride. I've got kind of my own little gig here now running the trading business. You're working at midnight sometimes because you're dealing with folks across the pond to cut a deal, but I've been doing this most of my life, so it's a fun ride. Really like it.
Absolutely. Certainly I know that our APU department, which is run by Rick Toby, they live in a little bit of a silo because it's such a subset, right? So Jet Midwest as a company does literally everything from nose to tail. Every part on the airplane we're trading in very frequently, and he has that particular product line that he owns, and he does kind of live in a silo. It's him plus one. And like you said, if you've got to deal with a client that's in the Middle East, it's a post-dinner phone call and answering emails and 1, 2 o'clock in the morning and hoping you get an answer by the next day. But absolutely, certainly in that trading aspect especially, that's just kind of how it is. You don't really need more than that. Just to go backwards a little bit, you said you started working on Hueys. Maybe enlighten the folks who are maybe dealing with fixed-wing aircraft, maybe a little bit about what that experience is like.
I did get to sit in the co-pilot seat a few times because our chief warrant officer 4 said, if we ever go to war together, you got to know how to at least get us on the ground. So under the cuff, he let me do a couple of little things, but never really piloted it myself. It'd been nice if I could have got the opportunity to do that. But that's a whole nother path in the military, to get your pilot's license in the military, or become a pilot. To answer your question about the difference between like a fixed-wing deal and a helicopter, with the Hueys, it's probably going to be different just from military to civilian as well. It's whole different worlds out there. So what my shop was set up, I had a shop just like it was probably 400 square feet or so, and that was my engine shop. So I did all my engine work there, and I got up to E5 pretty quick. So I had 2 guys working for me, and we maintained 18 aircraft. I was stationed at Fort Benning, Georgia, in the 498th Medevac. Fort Benning, Georgia is in Columbus, Georgia, and they do not have a Medevac. So they're using that Medevac unit to support the civilians there. So that unit is actually active 24/7, even during peacetime. So I had to have those helicopters running and turning at 95 to 98% all the time, or we had to work down at the hangar 24 hours a day to get them up like that way. And one of the stories I had that was kind of cool was there's a hell hole, what they call in a helicopter. So when you get onto the belly of it, there's a hole up in there that you can fit in there, working there, and they call it the hell hole because it's pitch black in there. And it leaks everything in there. When you're up there working there, it's hell, right? I forget what they call it in the military. Some of the military guys can probably correct me, but here we do ADs, right? If we have an airworthiness directive, they could ground a whole fleet, that kind of thing. Well, same thing happened on the Huey. There was a fuel line in there that was leaking, and they grounded all the Hueys across about the world. We had so many days to get them all changed. So me and 2 other guys went in there and changed those fuel lines out, and we had to do it on the tarmac in the middle of summer in Georgia, which is like Florida humidity. Yeah, it was not fun. So we spent 72 hours down there, and 3 of us changed out 18 aircraft fuel lines and got it all done. I mean, we were wiped out after those 3 days, but when I worked in the military as an engine guy, it was more like having a shop at my house is what it felt like, because I had my little engine shop there. All the birds were either in the hangar or on the runway there. And I owned everything when it came to the engines, because in the military, like I said, it's a little bit different than the civilian life. And it was really like having my own shop. It was a neat experience. I really enjoyed it and learned a lot, and real good camaraderie. The chief warrant officer 4 and even the commander over the whole post came down. When we got that done, they took us to the officers club and we partied.
So having to maintain that fleet at a 95 to 98% readiness level, how did you apply that when you went to the commercial side?
Well, when I came into the commercial world, I realized when you're in the military and you're an NCO, you get to tell people what to do. In the civilian life, you have to ask them. When you step into a leadership role, and as a civilian individual, it's a whole different set of rules, right? You got HR rules you have to deal with. You got different structure rules, because in the military, if you outrank them, you just tell them what to do and they do it, or they get in trouble. This is the way you roll. So when I got in the military, I did use some of the things I learned just as far as mechanical skills and stuff. And I've actually been a mechanic since I was about 12. I always had it in my blood. So I've been wrenching on cars and stuff for just about ever. So it was right up my alley. I didn't really use some of the leadership skills I had until I got past being a mechanic and started being a lead and that type of thing. And that's when I kind of discovered, can't tell these folks what to do. You got to do the rules. And I was very fortunate and blessed by John Brash, who was a CEO of the company at the time. I went and told him, I said, I need some education here. So he sent me to all kinds of Dale Carnegie schools. I think I probably have, 100 and 150 hours of schooling through how to work in HR, how to work with people, how to be a leader, the whole leadership portfolio of all the stuff I needed to learn through about a year's worth of time, which set me up to be a good leader when I got that role. I like leadership as much as I do aviation. Every year I go to a leadership summit to try to improve my leadership skills because you can never stop learning about how to be a good leader. I've read the books such as like Nuts, Herb Keller, who ran Southwest, and how he ran that, made that one of the best airlines in the world when he was running it. And he has a leadership style in there that I try to follow. It's just a great book to read. Another book I read was Good to Great. That's the same thing about a leadership style. You got to understand when you're a leader, these folks on the floor out there are your company. If you don't respect them and provide for them and lift them up, and you got some accountability in there too, but you got to equip them to be successful. I've used that all my life as far as a leader, and it's worked every single time.
Let's talk a little bit about Piedmont and talk about, I know you talked about some of the product types, and you talked a little bit about that business model, and I'm not sure people can fully appreciate how big of a deal it was. I remember when you guys put the deal together with Honeywell on the APU lease program. I can certainly say from a market perspective, that was significant. You guys literally shifted the marketplace with that deal, and you've been getting positive repercussions from that ever since. So I don't know how much of that you want to talk about, or how much of that really led into maybe a springboard effect into the success that you're having today.
It absolutely did, yeah. I don't really consider the 757, 767 a legacy aircraft, but it is. But the good thing about that particular aircraft, a lot of it's going to cargo. So even though it's slowing down in the commercial world, the cargo world is still really likes that aircraft, and there's plenty of them out there. So it's going to have a long tail, which I don't think Honeywell thinks it does. Another contract we signed during that time, which is also another springboard to what I'm doing here as well, is we signed a 10-year deal with Honeywell to be the only authorized service center for the 757, 767. Now, when I say that, there's people who already have their license now. They get to keep their license till it expires. We're not the only ones doing that APU right now. And the airlines get to keep their license as well. But as these other licenses expire, they won't be able to be renewed. We're going to be it. It's a 10-year deal. We basically own that product line, and Honeywell's going to slow down in doing those engines because they want to do the 131 and 500 in-house, and some other new, the RE220 and some of those guys. So that was another thing we picked up, which is another kind of springboard to our growth. By getting the lease pool signed up, getting the 131 signed up, and getting the 500 signed up, and getting the long-term agreement with the 331, 200, 250, it put us in a position on a growth path that I don't think we could even have thought of. It just opened some doors for us to put things in place that if we take advantage of them correctly, we can put a service into folks that didn't get the service they should have got from the OEMs. Because sometimes your OEM, if you're just like a 5 or 10 airplane operator, you're not going to get the service you would get if you're Southwest, right? So most of the customers we're focused on now to grow the business is those smaller operators like you guys that need an engine here, engine there. And we're not built to do 400 or 500 APUs a month like Honeywell is. We're just not built that way. What this done for us is we've grown in such a way that 34%, it's allowed us to, like you said, springboard. And what we've done here, I invite you down here, Patrick, because I think you'd be really impressed with the shop. The shop has actually changed and done a lot of lean processes in there now because of the growth. So we now have dedicated lines for each one of these product lines. So for instance, on the 331, 200, 250, we have 4 different dedicated lines for that APU because of the volume we're doing. That way we can induct 4 APUs at a time and keep that volume going through. And our key customers are in separate product lines. And that way they get the service like they should get the service. Same thing with the 131 and the 500. Right now we just have one line for each because the volume's not there. Once the volume picks up, we'll put another line in and another line, if it grows, right, on the growth level. And the legacy aircraft, the 36 and 85, we've actually moved that to a different building, and they have dedicated lines over there. So this building I'm in now focuses on the newer type aircraft. We did some good deals with Honeywell. We're continuing to do some good deals with Honeywell. We're in negotiations all the time with stuff for those guys. And it's really, like you said, it springboarded us into a position to where we can be a powerhouse in the industry. And not only with the new product, but even with the older product that we were pretty well known for, but now we're known even more for the 200 and 250 because we're the only game in town for the most part.
We'll continue this discussion on the next episode of Nose to Tail, a podcast presented by Jet Midwest. Don't forget to please like and subscribe to our channel.